So we've got those removed. Now we should be able to remove this upper pinch bolt. And I'm going to put my lower pinch bolt down here. And then pull this out. And this is going to want to drop. When you pull that out, remember we're trying to protect that CV boot there. So we want to hold this and kind of gently guide this out if possible. Watch your brake line. So we've got it out. We just want to set that aside. Okay, so no need to keep this sticker on here. So we can take that off before we put it in. Yeah, and this is going to go in the same way that the old one came out. You've got your 2 holes for your pinch bolts to go through, and same 3 bolts for the top. And the same rule applies here. We want to be careful of that CV boot. Make sure that we don't damage that in putting this in. And this usually is easier if you have 2 people. So you have somebody at the top to kind of guide that in, but it can be done with 1 person. What you might want to do is just kind of come up here so you can see, and then take one of your nuts and put 1 nut on there, kind of hold it in place, and that'll help you then get everything lined up down here. You might have to push the steering knuckle down a bit and turn things to get everything lined up, but everything should go back in fairly easily. One thing you can do to make this job a little bit easier, and I didn't do this, but you can take, if you have a wire brush, you can clean this off and even spray a little bit of silicone on there, and that'll help that all slide together a little bit easier. So you may have to get this all pushed down your steering knuckle a little bit to get this all lined up. But once you do, you can put these bolts back in. Now one of the things you're going to want to do is put a little bit of anti-seize compound up here on the spline part, just to keep that from, in the future, this steel oxidizing and bonding with this aluminum. Alright, so we've got our anti-seize lube on there. Now we're just going to push this down and in to get that lined up and through. And you might have to turn the strut a little bit. You're going to have to just kind of work it to get that through. And then we're going to do the same thing with the bottom. Then we'll put a little bit of the anti-seize lube on there. And same thing. Slide that through. And in this case, we have to push that strut back a little bit. Put that in. And that goes through. Alright, so we've got those. We'll go ahead and put those back on. Now I'm going to go ahead and reattach the bracket that holds the anti-lock brake sensor line. And this again doesn't always require it, but you got it handy. I just want to spray that up, make it slide on a little bit easier. And this is going to go through the first hole. You can see there's 2 holes in this flange that sticks out here. We want to put that through the first hole. And we'll take the 10mm ratcheting wrench and we'll tighten that back down. And I'm not aware of any specific torque specifications on this particular bolt, so just get it good and tight. But as always, double check and make sure that there aren't specific torque specs on these. So we're going to go ahead and tighten these up now. And this one's a little tricky to get on. There's not much room to work in there at all. So you kind of have to balance this nut on the top of the stud and very gently turn it and get it started so you don't lose it. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and snug these pinch bolts up. And you could do this with the impact wrench, and the impact wrench actually will make it a little bit easier when we want to start to draw this bolt in. But for now, I just want to get these snug down. You may be able to see that it's starting to draw that in. Another thing that we're going to want to do before we get everything tightened down is we want to get that sway bar link pushed back in. And one trick that I found that's useful to that is if you get your foot in here, you can get a little leverage on that sway bar and push that down enough that you can draw that bolt in there. And then you could also use, if you have a 2x4 or some sort of lever, something to hold that on there. This again is going to be easier if you have a helper, but we just want to get that on there and then crank this up. And remember, you're going to need your 18mm wrench on the back side to hold that in place so that you're turning the nut and not the bolt. And we'll snug that up. And then we'll torque that down to the proper specs after we get the rest of this done. So now I'm going to go ahead and get the impact wrench out to finish up snugging these down. I'm just going to turn that down a little bit, and we're going to want to hold on to this. Make sure we're going forward. And I turn that down because I want to make sure that I don't over torque that with the impact wrench, which is fairly easy to do because we want to finish that up by hand with the torque wrench. You're going to want to make sure with your vehicle that you check your torque specifications for your particular make, model, and year. I've got my torque wrench and I've set it to the proper specs for this particular vehicle. So now we're just going to finish this up by hand. You can see we're there. We usually want to do about another quarter turn on this. So we're good there. And then we'll do the same thing with that inside bolt for the sway bar link. So again, is a case where sometimes it's helpful to have a helper. But you don't always have a helper. So we're good there.